I was looking at the S&P, and I don't know how many of you were paying any attention to the S&P today, but it was just it was it was a new definition of mind-numbing. And when you see that, a situation like that, you've got to be very, very, very careful not to sabotage the inherent positive expectancy that we have. So I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. Wait a minute. Here we go. This was today. This is a classic chart. Now, the range, I think, today might have been 4.5 handles, but effectively, you had about a 2.5 handle range if you were really good. And so this is what your average guy or gal out there is trying to trade all day long, and they're trying to find an indicator that's going to tell them how to trade this. It doesn't exist. Now, I say this can only be traded effectively one way. If you traded this today and you made money, I would really like to know how, because you shouldn't have, frankly. There's not enough range in it. I traded it. I got stopped out of a long, I got stopped out of a short, and then I said no mas, because it was clear nothing was going to happen. But there is, when this is going on over here, I don't know that this is how this is going to turn out, right? I mean, this is clear in hindsight. And what can prevent you from getting twisted around in here and chasing it and getting whipped to pieces, it's amazing how much money you can lose in a 5-handle range in the S&P if you get on a mission. Believe me, I know this. And a lot of traders lose more money or as much money on days like this as they do when they're fading a trend all day long. Tomorrow we're going to trend probably. We're going to break out one way or the other. And everybody's going to jump on board and start fading it as soon as it starts to move. It's the same old story every day. Now, this was today. So this is how you trade a day like today. You can't anticipate with any consistency when you're going to have one of these days like this in the S&P. But always remember, you're always trading the larger degree of development. It will keep you out of trouble. So if you were trading this entire market up here, especially before we drop down here, this was a balance area perched at the upper extreme of a larger degree structure. I thought this had great opportunity. I thought we were going to break out to the upside. I got stopped out on my long, but I went long, thinking, okay, here we go, because yesterday was such a narrow range day, and it's going to happen. There's nothing you can avoid. I had a losing day today, but actually I traded quite well. I have no problems with having lost money today. I mean, obviously, I'd like to make money on every trade I take, but it's not going to happen. The idea is to be consistent and to trade well. If you trade well, the expectancy part takes care of itself, and you don't get stuck in situations like this where, you get stuck in quicksand, so to speak, and you feel like you can't get out. And the point of this is that there are really only certain places to trade, and if you're focusing on those places, then you avoid all this mess that most of the other traders are trying to trade. They're competing. They're food for the high-frequency trader. They're liquidity providers for the high-frequency traders. Okay, well, this is the Australian dollar, and we're right here. What do you do here? Nothing, right? You don't do anything. I mean, you can be sitting here and thinking, oh, I should have bought it over here. Now it's going up here, and I missed the trade. You haven't missed anything. This is not your trade. You're not at an extreme. You're in the middle of a range. Look at this. This thing is just as likely to turn around on a dime and trade back down here as it is to go up and test these highs. You have no basis for taking a trade. You don't have any expectancy. If I were to go long here, my stop would have to be at least below here. If I were to go short here, my stop would have to be here. And what's my target? Well, my target is the other extreme. So it's a 50-50 target, and it's a 50-50 chance the trade's going to work. You don't take these trades. So you're defining what you're doing. And if you're sitting there and you see this and you don't do anything, you've done something. You've done something extraordinarily rare. You've actually looked at the market and made a logical deduction that at this point in time, this is not offering the opportunity. So don't sabotage the method. This is a robust, stable methodology. I mean, by robust, I mean that in every sense of the word. It works in all markets, in all time frames, across all levels of volatility. And it's, stable is part of robust. It's not going to break down. It's not something that's fragile that is created by some complex equation that has 45 variables, and if one of the variables goes wacky, then it blows up. And that's sort of the model of a lot of these hedge funds that blow up, that they're operating on these mathematical models, these complex models, and if something goes awry in the relationship between the Japanese yen and the Australian dollar, it blows up their model, or something like that. I mean, you see it over and over and over again throughout. As long as I've been in this business, that's why the hedge funds always blow up. Now, the other thing about this is that all the pieces are consistent and they're interconnected. The whole basis, the purpose of the markets to facilitate trade. Trade is not being facilitated at extremes because they're unfair prices. Therefore, price is going to regress back to value as long as the market participants are holding the consensus of value. The migration of value tells you what the market participants feel is fair. And everything always comes back to the same consistent concepts. The concept of trading with a positive expectancy. This gives you a logical basis and a specific means to do that. It's very easy to say, you see all this stuff, well, you want to trade with an edge, okay? So how do I get that? How do I do that? Well, is it with this? Is it with your oscillator? Is it with your magic number series? Does that give me an edge? Is it, how does that work? You know how this works. By now, you should be able to, if you can't trade it yet, and you shouldn't necessarily be able to trade it yet, it's only been a few weeks, but you should be able to sit down on paper and in a relatively short paragraph describe this methodology, how to trade it, and why it works. Now let's talk a little bit about trade targets tonight because we haven't talked about that a lot. Excuse me, that's my fault. But the reality of trade targets is that it's something else that just flows naturally from the trade location. If you're in the trade, you're either stopped out or the trade works. That's the way it is. Now, I understand it's not quite that simple, and we're going to talk about some of those aspects of getting in a trade and it starts to work, and what do I do, and when do I lower my stop, and where do I take partial profits, and all of these things. We're going to talk about that.